Hi folks and welcome to DevTrends. Today we're gonna talk about new web worker powered library called Greenlet, ES2018 release and webpack for beta. So Greenlet is another library of our permanent resident Jason Miller. He's definitely pushing forward with all the stuff, and his new addition to open source goodness is of course tiny library called Greenlet, which takes a function of your choice and moves it to a newly created web worker. This way the function code is run in separate thread without blocking main thread processes like UI rendering, and yet still returning calculations to the main application. So let's see how it works. So let's switch to our terminal and let's create Greenlet demo. And let's make npm init and let's install Greenlet itself. Let's wait a bit. Okay. So let's create basically two files, index.html and index.js file. Okay, let's do this in code then. Code. Okay. Let's do it again. So here are our two files. Here's our base layout. We include script, our index.js here, and here let's import a Greenlet library itself, Greenlet, and let's create some asynchronous function that will be executed in the separate thread via web worker. So let's call it getName, for example. So Greenlet is essentially a wrapper around your asynchronous function. So here we got our function, and here let's do some random stuff, like for example let's fetch some data from some API. Let it be Star Wars API, API call API people 1, and let's get the name of the return JSON object, await res JSON, and let's return this name. So here is our function. It will be moved to web worker thread automatically by Greenlet because it's a wrapper, as I've already said. And let's make a run function here. Let's get a name with awaiting getName function result, and let's lock name here, and let's run this function in the end. So that's all our code. Async await is supported in major browsers including Chrome, so let's just start this with parcel as is, and let's go to our localhost server. Let's check the code. So you can see our API call is working. It's here, and if we go to network page, sorry, not this, but this, you can see that this function, it is here, and this request to Star Wars API is executed in separate thread. You see this icon here, it's indicating that this API call is processed in the web worker. And if we go to sources, you can see number 3 here It's our web worker. And here is our web worker file that is included into the main thread, and you can see the code here, which been produced by Greenlet library. So the Greenlet library is like a handy sugar around your web worker stuff, and you can move all the heavy computations, all the heavy functions into the separate thread with this. So it's definitely look like magic, but it's just coming from clever approach. If you look at Greenlet's code, let's navigate to Greenlet GitHub repository, and there is just a single file of all the logic. So here is it. So instead of direct URL to your web worker file, it uses URL create object URL along with blob constructor to define your async function and move it away to the worker. And of course you should definitely check the libs code, it's concise and well documented. So performance tests are yet to come, but as for web workers, you can be sure that this is a huge optimization in terms of parallelizing your code execution and moving the heaviest operation away from main thread. So now let's move to ES2018. So hard times trying to use features from new ECMAScript releases in your today's code are long gone. Now we don't need even Babel so much, because all the fresh JavaScript stuff is available almost instantly after spec release, and we should firstly thank browser vendors for it. Competitors are working together to bring developers and users best experience, and everyone's happy. And that's why this year's ECMAScript 2018 is the quietest S release so far. Features include async iterators and generators, object rest spread, promise prototype finally, and various regex improvements. And all these are already implemented by Chrome 64, which is stable now. They will be also available in Node 10, which comes live this April. And probably most interesting feature is asynchronous iterators, and let's check the code. So let's check how async iterators actually work. Let's create a new file. Let's kill the server. Let's create it here, just index.js, let it be. So first of all, let's write some small handler function that will delay our asynchronous code to specified milliseconds. So set timeout, resolve, and here we got milliseconds. So next let's write some different asynchronous function to check iterators. That would be for one. Here we got like delay for a second, awaiting of course, and we return for one string, for example. Let's create for two. For two here, and let's delay for example 2 seconds, and for three, delaying for 3 seconds. And now let's make a run function, and here we call it, and let's check how it will work in different scenarios. So first of all, we have our basic promise all method. So here is an array of these functions for 3, and let's check what we got here. So it's not async iterators, so far, but it's just like some basic iterating of promises. So we call all these 3 async functions and check this promise all and check the result. So let's start it here, index.js. Some await, yeah, here is it. Async await. So you can see it waits 3 seconds because the longest function is a foo3 here. It delays execution for 3 seconds. So promise all just waits for the longest of function and like resolves it when all these functions are ready. Now let's check how, for example, for off, like the basic for off, working in terms of these functions. Let's comment this code and let's console log here the res, and here we just call this function with wait. So you can see this is just waiting for each of this function to complete and to return. So firstly it waits 1 second, then 2 seconds, and then 3 seconds for foo3. And asynchronous iterators itself. So there is a new construct like for off, but it's called for await off. So we just write for await, and here we just iterate through all these functions. So this is almost like for off, like basic for off notation, but with the wait keyword, and here we can just log the result of it. Let's see what the result will be. And as I already said, these features are available by default in Chrome 64, but not available in Node yet, because it's 10th version which will make them available, and here we got only 9.5 version of Node, so we need to run it with Harmony flag, because Harmony flag supports all the Harmony features that are finished for now. So let's run this, and you can see that it awaits for every of this function to return. So firstly it returns function foo, because this is the first function here, foo1 I mean. So it's like waits 1 second, returns foo1, then it returns foo in 2 seconds. So it's like 4 seconds return to 1, next second return foo2, and as foo3 is the longest function here, after another second it returns foo3. So it's like not combining all these delays, it just returns the functions as soon as it's finished. So this is the difference between this notation and this notation. So there was like 3 different notations. So for await is a handy way to loop through all of your promises or async functions and execute it sequentially, but still in parallel, of course, because of concurrency. Now let's move to Webpack for beta. Webpack team has released first beta of next major fourth release of Webpack a couple of days ago. There were a few alphas starting from August, and now it's going pretty close to release. There are plenty of changes, so not as many as when switching from version 1 to version 2, but still some are breaking. Firstly, Webpack is far more performant now. Webpack team has dropped Node version 4 support, and that means newer syntax and accessing further optimizations of code implemented by V8. Also, they introduced new plugin system and special argument called mode to switch between development and production environments. And secondly, Webpack is looking forward to implement some kind of convention over configuration approach. With fourth version, you don't need to specify config, as Webpack assumes you have an src folder with index.js file in it, which will be the entry file of your application. And let's make it to the code. So let's test some basic features. So Webpack 4, let's create a new directory, Webpack 4 demo, and switch to it. Here let's make npm init, and let's install Webpack 4 beta. It is installed by next release. And there is also separate package now, it's called Webpack CLI, to access all the Webpack methods from the package.json, for example. Let's wait till it installs. So we've installed Webpack and Webpack CLI in our folder, and now let's create some files. Let's create src directory, and let's create index.js file init, which will be the main entry file of our application. Save it, close others, and actually let's add the folder to view a structure. Here is it, add. And let's, for example, install Lodash as well here. Or maybe we should install Lodash S, which can import S modules in our code with chunks, not like the whole library. And here let's do some stuff like import, for example, map function from Lodash. And let's console log just map 1, 2, 3 number, something like that. So, as I've already said, Webpack 4 doesn't require any configuration now, just some simple conventions like src folder, and let's just run Webpack from the root of this folder. Let's see how it works. So you can see that the Webpack has built our application. It outputted the error, the warning, about the mode option has not been set, because as we've already saw, there are two mode options that should be specified, like either development or production mode. But if you can see, this folder appeared, see it here, and there is all the production bundle of our application. You see there is a lot of code because it imports all the Lodash library. But there are another interesting feature of Webpack, that you can provide special property. It's called side effects, and you can put, if you are the author of some library, for example Lodash, you can put here like side effects. False. And that means you assure Webpack that your library doesn't have any side effects, and Webpack can optimize your code further and exclude any unnecessary code in the final bundle of your code's user. For example, when Lodash release a new version of Lodash with this updated package.json, with this entity in package.json. It's already in master now. So that will mean that only the map function itself will be imported here by default. So there's will be a lot less of code than it's now available here in our bundle. So this is another great optimization of Webpack 4. So let's now specify some mode. Let's run this in mode development. And you can see it's been built without any warnings, and you can see that there is our development code, which are not mangled, not minified. There are a lot of stuff as well. So if you need to run it in production mode with all the default loaders and plugins like Uglify.js plugin, for example, you can see there's our minified bundle of our application code. So there are a bunch of minor changes as well. You can check them all in Sean Larkin's blog post on Medium. And there is no concrete release date yet, but Webpack 4 will be somewhere around February-March 2018, so we can start preparing for its goodnesses now. So that's all for today, folks. All the links are in the description below. Thank you for watching and stay trendy!